Good morning. This m- this this morning, to get to the compa. Excuse me for being late, but was it was quite an effort to get to the compa this morning for many reasons. But for me, something that's very important is that when I came to Italy at the beginning, I was, how can I say, I l- lived in a context, in a very regular mm, context at the monastery of Sera, where I studied. I had a very regulated life every day. You know what time the teachings are, when the debate session is, when the program of the year was established like 600 years prior. I mean, it's the exact program that every year that is followed. It's very stable. And when I arrived, I thought, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I saw that the more I programmed things, the more they went awry. Every time I tried to plan something, I saw that it didn't actually go the way I had planned. And then at a certain point, I said, okay, here I think the best program is not to have a program, in the sense, sure, have objectives, give a direction, but without having to be, let's say, without being fixated, rigid on how and why and what. And and the I always, the idea of sailing always comes to my mind. I know where I want to go. I know where my starting point, but I don't know what how the currents will be, how the winds will be. I have a general idea, but it's a little bit like when someone says, "Oh, it shouldn't be raining now." Why? Oh, at this time of year, it shouldn't be this temperature. Or when anything happens, or we said, oh, this shouldn't have happened in this way. What actually happens is that each one of us perceives reality through two things, let's say. One's own horizon, one's own limit, what one is able to see, hear, experience, know. Inevitably, each one of us lives and perceives reality through himself. There's no other alternative. So we see things based on our knowledge, our experience, and our senses. And then the other aspect that comes together with this is the idealized image of reality that we create. And already these two don't match. So we have our own inner image about, you know, how we think things are or should have been, that doesn't necessarily correspond, and very often doesn't correspond to the actual experience. Many things we can see like this. So when we think about the future, and the future is nothing other than our own projection. When we project this future, we project a, a future where we put together an equation, and we say, given that this is like this and that is like that, then this should be like this. So there's a part of our equation of the future in our head, which is already the result of a previous equation, and then there's a part of equation where we put the result without having had without having the whole equation. Like, I want this to be like that. And if it will be like that or won't be like that, we don't have control over the situation, even if in our craziness, often we think that we do. When we say, oh, this shouldn't be like this, I just answer, why not? Oh, because it's not right. Well, that's another topic. I mean, the fact that you don't like it like this is one thing, but why should it not be like this? The only real explanation that we have is that because according to our own logic and our own interests, we think that it would be better if it were different. But it's always important to go back to the idea of the leaf that falls from a tree and falls in one specific position. Why does it fall there? Because causes and conditions led for it to fall there. And these causes and conditions are so many, so vast, so different. And there's a quantity, is innumerable quantity of things, that variables that interact with among themselves, that bring to that result, or this present moment, what we're living. So to stay in that kind of illusion, so when I came to Italy and I was trying to organize things, I realized that there was something inside. I had quite an arrogant attitude. Not arrogance in the sense that I am better than you. No. It wasn't a feeling of comparing myself to others. It was an arrogance thinking that I knew how things should go. As if I should have this expectation that the reality should follow my own view, my own experience, when instead, actually, when I look more closely, my ability to perceive things, I talk about my own, but I think we're all quite similar. This Within this very, very complex equation of this present moment, I'm able to see a few numbers. If I'm able to see a small part of this equation, it's already a lot. So if I don't have a complete view of the equation, how can I expect to know what the result should be? Let's imagine that among 1,000 numbers, we're able to see one or two, and all the others, so we have no idea, and then we're asked what the result should be. If we're a little sincere, we would say, how can I know? I can say, I would personally, I would like to have this result, but what the actual result will be, I can't know that. It's like playing the lottery. I choose a number and I hope that it's going to be that number. At the end of the day, the lottery is a very complex, is the result of a very complex, equation, or is it completely random? I mean, there's a way. The karma of all of those present, the way the numbers are chosen, and how they're placed and how they're chosen. It's the things that we live are always like a complex equation, and the more numbers there are, the more numbers that we can be aware of, the greater the probability of guessing the result. But But as long as we don't know all of the numbers and the whole equation, we won't know really what the result will be. I mean, I've always been a very logical person, linear, we can say. And in my linear, logical way of being, I would say this is like this, and so that should be like that. But even following our own logic, regardless of how coherent it is to us, it doesn't take into consideration all the variables. I've seen people, for example, follow very logical, have a very logical point of view within their context. They would start from one, maybe a presupposition, and it seemed very, very logical because but maybe they would start from a point that wasn't that was just a supposition, and then if you change that, then the whole idea doesn't doesn't stand up. So just let go from the point of view of not having this kind of attachment to how things should be without losing at the same time enthusiasm, our joy, our desire to realize something, to go in a certain direction, to have our own important objectives. Because sometimes it seems like, if I can't have control over the situation, I'm not going to even try. No, it's important to have our objectives. And within that, I don't know, I mean, something that I learned with Lama Michel Rinpoche is when we set an objective that corresponds to our principles, our feelings, where there's a clean motivation, where there's an objective that's not created on the basis of selfishness or some kind of obsession with self-gratification. When we're able to set a so-called clean objective, the means to find the tools, the tools are can be found. Doesn't matter if we need to try again and again and again. We're not overwhelmed by the difficulties because we know with clarity what we're doing. And maybe these 50 failures are actually part of the path to get to that 51st success. This reminds me of something that happened a few years ago. There was a kind of game, like computer game, a cell phone. Many of you will remember the name was Angry Birds. And this game was so successful, and it was actually in the news, and I read an article that said that it was created by a group of programmers. I can't remember, maybe from East Europe. Anyway, just a group of friends who had made 50 games over the years, and each one a greater failure than the previous one. And so for years and years and years, they worked on these games that were total failures. And the 51st game that they created was Angry Birds, that became incredibly successful. And I remember in this article they said, we learned that every time we we failed, we learned something, but we didn't know when it was going to actually become successful. So what I mean to say is that when we have a clear objective in front of us, we shouldn't be afraid of failing. We shouldn't be afraid of difficulties, of afraid of being tired or being afraid of things going the way that we didn't expect, because we have something much greater in front of us. So with an attitude of humbleness, we say, I don't know what all the variables are along this path. I have a very, very limited view, which is not a problem. Having this limited view, it's a fact. And with with that I need to find my path. But I need to believe in this direction, as this is fundamental. I didn't want to talk about this today, actually, but given that a couple things happened this morning before getting here, that made me think about it all. This fact of, let me repeat again, this important for us to keep our direction. As we've said in the past, we have a high objective, constant. A high objective means that can transcend the I and the my. Sincere. Low expectations, non-arrogance towards reality, this awareness of one's own limits of perception. And so to not have these expectations or expectations of how things are supposed to go. Obviously, I mean, we do have expectations. We have the expectation that if I walk along this road, I will find this and that. But I take away that expression, because often when we speak, it really influences the way we act. So we need to be very, very careful about the way we speak. When Buddha Shakyamuni explained the way to change our behavior, our mind, it starts with a physical behavior, and then verbal behavior, and then finally mental behavior. So the way we speak, it's something that we really need to take care of. And there, even outside Buddhism, there are many different areas, neurolinguistics, for example, that show that speech conditions our mind. So, for example, I don't favor aggressive speech, words that have a violent connotation, even if they're not used with that intention. But that meaning it is within those words, isn't it? And it's not a question of being prude or moralists. No, it has nothing to do with that. What I'm talking about is coherence, that what I do and what I say, that they correspond. If I want to have my mind in a certain way, it's important that my speech also corresponds to what I want to reach. Here we are saying, may all beings have happiness and its causes, be free from suffering and its causes. And we call ourselves Mahayana practitioners. We talk about bodhicitta. At least let's use words that are respectful and that correspond to feelings of love and respect. And for sometimes I've seen this many times. We say, "Oh, well, I just say it like this. It's a habit. It's it's just part is of our culture, or it's a way of saying." I agree that it's a just an expression. It's a cultural expression. It's not something said with that weight, but that meaning comes along with those words. So if even if we don't say it with that awareness or that intention, regardless of that, those words um, bring that negativity with them. Mm. And in the same way, when we recite things, even if we don't understand the meaning, but have been recited for 600 years and bringing so much benefit, that brings the positive result. I'm just going to close my parentheses here. This is my side note, but this is very important. And sometimes I have this feeling that we lose a little bit the logic of things. Like, I mean, why should someone pay attention to what they say? Not because it's right or wrong or it's a sin. It has nothing to do with moralism. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that our speech conditions our mind. And if someone says, "Oh, I'm not conditioned by the words I say," no, it's a lie. You're lying to yourself. No one is able to not be conditioned by their own speech. Anything we say, it all conditions our mind. Anything we see, everything we see conditions us. And here we're getting a little bit into what I wanted to share with you today. But just closing that subject from before, it's important to go to set virtuous objectives without having expectations about when and how and why, but with constancy. Because if I wanting to get to that objective, it's not going to happen without effort. Even our own personal objectives that sometimes seem impossible. Instead, it's a question of one baby step after the other. What I wanted to talk about today starts from the following. Each one of us, as we said before, perceives everything, lives his own life, and perceives reality inevitably through, as we said before, through the filter of self. And what is this filter made of? Our body, our senses. It's made up of our own experiences in the past, information that we receive and have received. And we perceive and we live reality through these filters. For us, I mean, what exists, and for us, what exists is what we're able to see. We really live within a bubble. There's this theory of the bubble, where each one of us lives within a bubble, and we believe that the world that we see is the one that we're experiencing. The other day, I was listening to this wonderful professor who made reference to this bubble, and he said, When at the time of Brexit, for example, in England, when England wanted to leave and they voted to leave the European Union, this Italian professor was together with some researchers who were mostly English, and they were in Patagonia or somewhere, and he asked them, why are you here and not back home voting for something so important? And they said, oh, I mean, 99% of the English will vote to stay in Europe. Why? Because they were all university professors, um, very well educated, because within their academic field and within their environment, 99% of their bubble would have voted like this. And we think that outside our bubble, everyone's like us. I mean, this is how we're made. And that's why it's so important to travel, to see different people, listen to others. Because when I see you and I allow myself to see you, because often we're in front of someone, but we're not allowing ourselves to actually see that person. I don't know if that's clear. It seems like a play on words. But very often we're in front of someone, and what we're seeing is our own desires, our own needs, our own aversions, our own attractions. And we don't stop for a moment with that attitude of humbleness, to allow ourselves to see the needs of the other, the attractions and aversions of the others, the needs of others, the worldview of the other, to really allow ourselves to see the person in front of us. Very often we don't do that. It's not that easy. When we're able to do it, our horizon expands. And that's also it's important also to live with others, because when we live with others, our horizon, we hope, expands. That when my life is not only about my needs and my desires. No, someone else exists. And then hopefully one's horizon expands more and more. And the same thing happens when we come into contact with different cultures. When we come into contact with different cultures, we see that things aren't always in the way that we see things. We open up our horizon. And so it's really important to share and experience, be in front of that which is different. Often I see that being in front of that which is different is brings fear. But instead we should be more afraid about being in front of everything that's the same. Because if everything's similar, everything's the same, that will keep me from opening up and from growing. And the more I live in an environment, a context where the people are similar to me, that bubble that I live in becomes more and more solid. And anything outside the bubble is wrong. It can't be like that. Instead, the more we're able to expand that bubble, we can't break it. When we become a Buddha, then we can break that. That bubble breaks. But until we're able to actually break that bubble, we need to make it as transparent as possible, as big as possible, And a way to do that is to be in front of that which is different, to see what's different, to know, to exchange, to open up to. When we're in front of someone who thinks differently from us, if we have an open attitude of listening, of observing, of seeing the other, the possibilities are mostly two. Either I change my idea or I reinforce my idea. Right? You show me something that's different, I see it and I say yes, but I'm going to hold on to my own idea. I reinforce my own idea. Or another view would be seeing a different point of view, seeing a different reality and appreciating it. Maybe we change our idea. And there's a third possibility. I see your point of view that's different than my point of view is different from yours. Yours is different from mine. We get to a third point. We can then come to a third point of view between us. This allows us to grow, to evolve, and to not stay closed up in our own bubble, our own view. So that's why it's important to stay together with what's different cultures, different points of view, to open ourselves up to others, try to open up expand our worldview. And an important point here doesn't have to do only with the fact, how can I say, of coming in contact with other cultures, other worldviews in a wider point of view. But when we expand our horizon, it's about coming into contact in a very sincere way, also with the people that we share our daily life with. Understanding that reality is not necessarily, it doesn't come necessarily through my own perspective. I'm not better than you. I'm not worse than you. I'm myself, you're yourself. We each do what we think is best. So when we open ourselves to others, it's important also to have an attitude. It's difficult but fundamental, where we try not to compare ourselves to others. Because even if we need to make a comparison, we need a reference point. So what's that starting point for comparing? Often there's a starting point. There's a reference point to make a comparison. So what would be our starting point, our reference point to compare ourselves? And we're all so different and so complex that it would be very hard to really compare. So I see it like this. Each one of us, we have many, many things in common, but we're also very, very different. We each have our own reality, our own story, and it's beautiful to be able to see everyone, to see that among all of our similarities, we also have differences, and we're all guided by our own ignorance. We do the best we can, but we're guided by our own ignorance. So it's important for us, as we go forward day after day, it's important to expand our horizon as much as possible. with the people around us, with the animals, with nature, with different cultures, with different situations, to really open ourselves up to others. It's also one of the principles of bodhicitta, because it's wonderful, all the philosophical studies, the parts of it's the more formal part of Dharma, let's say, that I love is marvelous. But to support all of that, we need to see how we apply it to our daily life. And at the basis of the development of bodhicitta, there's equanimity. The first thing is equanimity. Without equanimity, you cannot develop unconditional love, which is the basis to develop bodhicitta. If there's something that we are very often proud of, is that we're Mahayana Galupa practitioners. We recite Sangye Chudan Soge Chanamla for the benefit of all sentient beings. And there is all of this. Okay, it's good. But at the basis, what should be there? Equanimity. And equanimity doesn't mean you are all the same and I'm watching you. It means we are all different, but at the same time, we're all in the same boat. We're all extremely similar in many, many aspects. We're in the same situation, but this equanimity goes beyond. There are many types of equanimity. The equanimity necessary for developing love is not an equanimity where we say that we're all the same. It's the equanimity of attraction and aversion. It means before loving everyone, we need to gradually get out of this constant game of comparing ourselves one with another, and thinking, oh, I'm better at this, and this other one is better at this, or have attraction or aversion. We need to go beyond. We need to go beyond, and something that helps us for this is increasing, expanding our view. Try at least to be in front of someone and try to see our shared reality. It's shared because we're living this same spatial temporal experience. But how can I see this same reality in the best of my ability? How can I see that through your eyes? Start from the basis that at the basis each one of us perceives reality through himself. So what is the reality that you are perceiving? You shouldn't be like this. You shouldn't be experiencing it like that. Yes, through everything that I have lived, the way I see things, really try to open ourselves up to understand and see how others see. One, in the end, acts where one finds most coherence. It's important for us to open up, because when we're able to see others more, and we have a view that includes others, this naturally takes us to develop more love towards others. And others, we don't mean others, a generalized other. We mean in a specific way, that being there. When we get close to someone, for example, and we allow ourselves to see that that person or that being. Could be an animal. I'll give you an example. Some time ago, there was this beautiful documentary that came out on the octopus. And it was translated, my friend at the bottom of the sea. So this this being that's served as a salad has feelings like we do, has needs, and so what happens within us? We spend an hour and a half looking at the life of this being. We create a kind of empathy and affection and understanding for this being. And in most of us, it would. I've heard people say, no, I don't want to watch that movie because I like eating octopus. That means because I don't want to let go of a pleasure, I don't want to expand my horizon. I mean, we're absolutely ignorant beings. That's clear, isn't it? When I'm able to expand my horizons, I can expand the most beautiful part of myself. Otherwise, what bodhicitta are we talking about? If we're not able and we don't allow ourselves to open up towards others, if we don't expand our horizons and open ourselves up to others because we're afraid of losing a small pleasure. But when we can and we see others gradually, we see that others are much more similar to us than what we could expect. And often what happens is we develop a certain affection, attention towards others naturally. So very often it happens that, how can I say? As Geshe Chekawa said in the 7-point mind training of Lojong, that there's two lines that are fundamental. Lele tamche chiglada, kun la kadra chiwagom. Lele tamche chiglada, eliminate, recognize and eliminate the guilty one, the one guilty for everything, and familiarize yourself with the kindness and the gratitude towards, familiarize yourself with affection towards others. Who's the one guilty of all? Who the other? No. Everyone has this idea. Maybe the government. Everyone has his own way of seeing who's to blame for everything. This obsession with self-gratification, the one to blame. Our inability to see others. And if we go to see, I listen, I observe, and every once in a while, I imagine my grandfather. Now, my grandfather, if everything goes well, we don't know, but in January he should turn 100 years old. And the last time we were together, last year I think, I saw that he was there, 99 years old. There are other people in the family together, and there's this strange idea that because one is old that they don't understand. And there he is, just sitting there. It seems like he's not looking at anything, but he's aware of every detail. And then at the right moment, he says the right thing. Bang! Every once in a while, I feel a little bit like this. I think it's a quality that I try to emulate. Um, that you try, you listen and you observe. Oh, and then it doesn't mean that then you have to show that you are observing and you act the way you think is best. But when I observe often, what I see is that most of the time when we are complaining and when we criticize, m- mostly that comes from a very near-sighted point of view where we can't see beyond the eye and the mind, where we're not able to see. And I'm not I'm not when I don't mean not seeing what's happening on the in the planet. No, I'm talking about not seeing what is on the plate in front of us, um, the one next to us, the one we share our bed with, the one that we live with or we work with, and this generates conflict and inner suffering that's frightening, bringing gradually to an escalation of violence that comes on a verbal level, on a physical level, even can lead to war. Just look. What we're just look at what we're doing to our environment. I say, like, we as human beings. There's just no words to describe it. And I don't want to open up this topic, but the point is we're ready to be to victimize ourselves and say that we are that we are victims a of a greater system. Um, and I don't know, but we're sure that we live in an interdependent reality of which we are part. And my physical, verbal, and mental behaviors are part of this whole. Every once in a while, I think about when I was small in Brazil. My parents had a house at the seaside at Isola Bella. It was a very, very small house with nice plot of land. And I remember that behind there was there was a wall. Um, there was this wall, and there were for the neighbors behind. And these neighbors, they would take their garbage and just throw it over the wall. I mean, it was a plot of land that didn't really belong to anyone. So instead of taking the garbage far, they would think, okay, as long as it's not on my land, it doesn't exist. So they would take their garbage and they would throw it on the other side of the wall. And on the other side of the wall, and of course, there were flies and everything else that garbage attracts that would come to them. Yes, it would go also to them, surely. So, from this point of view, it's something really ignorant, isn't it? I mean, the sense ignorant in the sense of not seeing. Ignorance in Sanskrit is avidya. A is a negation, and vid is to see. This inability to see something, and we have this ignorance where we're not able to see the whole. I see my garden that's clean. There's a wall next to me, and what's on the other side of the wall, I don't see it, so it doesn't exist for me. But on a level of interaction, I mean, what happens on the other side of the wall, that then falls back to me, doesn't it? Comes back to me. Our choices, our actions, our daily actions are part of a whole, a part of a whole of this planet, aren't they? For example, I didn't want to open this topic, but very, very briefly, just one example. When we buy something, what is what's the a reference point when we think about its cost? You know, what cost do we take into consideration when we buy something? Can I afford it? Can I not afford it? What's the basis? There's an economic basis. Do I have money for this? Is it expensive or not? If I buy that thing that is not so expensive, I mean, it's not expensive. Why not buy it? Right? But but reality is not that, in my point of view. The economic cost is just a small part of the equation. Everything that is produced, produced and sold and then bought has an impact on the environment that is not indifferent. We are constantly producing and buying in as if we were insatiable. So this before buying something, um, before I bring something into my house, ask ourselves, what is the real cost of this object? Not just the economic cost, but what's the impact that this object has? Do I really need this object? Is it really worth it? I try, not every day, but every once in a while, to reflect on the fact I would like to die. I mean, the day of my death, I'd like to see the way that I interacted with the planet, that I gave to the planet at least as much as I've consumed. That at the end of the day, when I die, that my life isn't an environmental weight, but even just breaking even is difficult. You know, people say, "Oh, Lama, just look around, look at the world around us." No, it would be very easy just to pass the buck to the great big corporations, to the society, um, to some also collective society. But we all, without taking away their responsibility, but we also have our own responsibility. So when we have a limited point of view, that keeps us from making better choices. Yesterday I saw a headline. And we see so many of these titles, we just don't even, we don't even pay attention to them anymore. In Antarctica, every summer, the ice melts, and in the winter, it refreezes. But this year, the quantity of let's say, ice that has not reformed. I can't remember exactly the area of it, but it was this enormous area. So it will no longer it will no longer be the freezer of the planet, but it will become it will make the it will do the opposite and will actually be like a stove, a wood burning stove of the planet. So to be able to make responsible choices, we need to open up and expand our horizons and really understand the interdependence of things. When we're interacting within the same equation, all numbers are fundamental. There's not one number that doesn't have its own importance. And one of our great mistakes as human beings is staying closed within our own little number and thinking that the others are not important. And that's why I invite all of you to gradually, in their best way possible, just start from the desire, this awareness that we want to expand our point of view. When we see someone, when we're with people who have a different point of view, try to let go of that attitude of thinking that my reality is the right way. Try to go beyond persons, experiences, without the fear that I'm going to lose my identity. Just no, no, no. Don't worry about losing your identity. Your bubble. You're holding on to that very strongly. You're not going to lose that. Sometimes we're afraid of losing this bubble of ours. This doesn't happen like that. And for this reason, so we shouldn't be. It's important that we're not here competing with others. We're not comparing ourselves to others. And I'd like to just conclude this with a verse that's coming to my mind very often these days. The first time when we were in the Lago d'Antrona, and then this verse keeps coming to me since then. Em emaho This is during the Chog offering, so I'll give you a literary translation. What's interesting when we translate is a translation is hardly ever a pure literal translation. There's always there's always a little bit of commentary, especially with Tibetan, that can be read different way. E maho is an expression of joy. E maho. Tsogi korloche. Tsog means to group, to accumulate. Tsog, we use this word also, tsogpa. It means like an association, a group of people. Tsog means like an accumulation of merit. Tsog literally means to unite, to accumulate, to be together. Tsogi korlo. This circle of accumulation, Gana Chakra, this circle of accumulation. And when we say, what's Gana Chakra? Oh, the ceremony we do. No, this represents the Gana Chakra. This circle of union is one way. This is the sharing. Emaho, how joyful this great circle of sharing of 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 merits, where we've invited all beings, holy beings and sentient beings, and we've invited them in this act of being together, and we're sharing. E maho tsogikoloche, this great circle of union, of sharing. Tusum desheshekshute, it's the path, it's the main path where all those who have passed, who have reached bliss, which is a term for Buddha, all those who have been able to reach a state of peace and bliss, they have done it through this sharing, this union, this accumulation. And it's also the place where all the realizations come. Realizations means of stability, of peace, of joy, of love. All realizations come from the sharing, from this union. Nampar no Emma so understanding this, seeing this. Oh, you heroes and heroines. It makes reference to the practitioners who are here with courage to follow, because you need courage to follow the Dharma, to go against the wind, to practice deeply, to go against your own conditionings and often against society itself. You need courage. You heroes and heroines, seeing this sharing, this union, this sharing, this circle of accumulation, of sharing, is the source of all realizations, and also the path of all those who have gone to bliss, who have become Buddhas. Then abandoning, it's almost like you have something and you just throw it away. You set it aside. Tsem is mind. So what mind should be nampartope? What mind should be abandoned? This mind of projection based on ignorance, by abandoning your own projections. And in this case, what are we talking about? Which projection? This projection, the opposite one. This the mind of individualism and selfishness. This idea that so to be free from suffering, I need to do what I want, when I want, and to do everything based on my own desire. So by abandoning this individualism, may this circle of sharing continue, the wheel of circling continue to turn. Ala la ho, which is another expression of joy. In other words, what are we saying? The path for peace, the path for joy, the path of bodhicitta, the path to reach Buddhahood, call it what you will, is the path of sharing, of cooperation based on respect, based on love, based on being together, and not a path based on competition, on individualism, on selfishness. And so let's abandon these erroneous perceptions, and let's do what we can to be together, to cooperate, to support each other. And this can be applied to all levels, those closest to those farthest away. It's quite clear, isn't it? And also, when we make these offerings, sometimes what happens, things are so important that to help us help us to remember them, they're transformed into ceremonies, and as something ceremonial is repeated within our structure. And the danger is that the ceremony becomes only a ceremony, and I lose my understanding of what it represents when we're talking about the importance of inviting all beings and to share, to cultivate love. This is the practice. And to remember every once in a while to go back to the essence of its fundamental. And to do this, we need to also, to do this, we need to amplify our sight, our expand our horizons. So let's recite together this verse. At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Tashitele. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.